Hello, everyone. Welcome to Deadline Dilemmas, and this is Pras, and we're coming to you on a Thursday night as usual. Not joined by Flapjack, who's still enjoying his Rico Lewis assist from the midweek. He didn't get it in FPL, but he's an enjoyer anyway. So he's enjoying himself in Vegas, and we've got our very able first sub, Hibbo, who's joining us. Hibbo, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for the invite. As always good to come on the show. And a bit like Flapjack, I'll be gambling in Vegas. I think we're kind of gambling with our ranks at the minute, and we're gambling with a decision on whether we're going to wildcard or whether we aren't going to wildcard. So look, lots to discuss. So let's
Exactly,
jump right in.
exactly.
Jump
Do you
right
know
in.
people who are looking at the thumbnail? It's called "Stuck in the Millions" or something in the millions. This was not us. We are not mocking our own ranks. We are all very sad, but I guess David Monday is the one to blame for this thumbnail and the name of the episode. But it's Deadline Dilemmas. Nobody's panicking. We're all fine in our ranks. We're okay, and we know that it's a long season ahead.
Yeah. Where are you ranked?
Like three
Three.
million or something, 3.5 million.
I'm like 2.8 million. It's scary. Loads of people talk about this is my worst start in the FPLs. I don't know what my worst start is in the FPL.
I
Like
don't
I've never
remember.
I've never kept track, like that kind of way. So it must be up there, and it's a real test of faith at the minute. So I, we'll just jump right in because neither of us are wildcarding this week.
Yeah.
So we're going to, I suppose, play it from the angle of like how we're going to play game week 8 and probably game week 9 without any kind of just transfers,
Yeah,
and
we'll
probably talk about.
we'll talk about
Go ahead,
our
sir.
dilemmas, which are our
Yeah,
teams, and we're obviously two examples of people who are trying to get through the week, or you can say crawl through the week into the international break, and then hoping maybe even after the international break to wildcard, so game week 10. But we will see. International break also brings with it challenges, changes. If there's a big injury, then you may pull the trigger anyway. So I'm open.
yeah.
I'm looking at it on a week to week basis. But for people who are on wildcard, I know it's a popular week. We've also got a wildcard draft. We've not made it. We've basically lifted it from Joe, who did his what's the show he
Goals
does?
imminent. Goals
Goals
imminent.
imminent. Exactly.
Yeah,
Sorry for not remembering that. But yeah, so he shared his wildcard draft because he is on wildcard, and so we'll just use that and talk about it on what we think if you were wildcarding this week. So let's get right to it. So I'm going
yeah.
to start with your team, Hibbo. So again, for the listeners, we'll talk about ours first, and then we'll get to the wildcard draft. So I'm going to read out your team. You've got Pickford, and then Trippier, Saliba, Udogi in defense. You've got Mbumo, Rashford, Bruno, Sterling, and Son captain at the moment. Alvarez and Haaland up top. Looks pretty decent to me. You've got Archer for sub, and then basically nothing else in your on your bench. So, what are your dilemmas?
Well, I feel like firstly I've been kind of unlucky with injuries because I've been kind of a bit of an advocate for having a big bench. And in a way, it's kind of lucky that I have a deep bench this week because I would definitely be wild carded, if you know what I mean. Now,
Yeah.
playing Saliba is like the definition of suboptimal. Like I don't want to be playing Saliba against Man City. But like if I run through my team from back to front, like I had the decision this week of like whether I'm going to wild card. Now I look at Pickford say at home to Bournemouth. Pickford's been terrible. I don't really think we can dress it up. Although Everton have kind of underperformed their XG, and they should have done better defensively. There should have been more returns. But if I look at Areola, he's playing, say, Newcastle, he's a popular pick. Flecken's a popular pick. He's playing Man United. Um, Raya would be interested on wildcard for goalkeeper. And for me, like I look at that spot and I think, well, is Pickford a downgrade in any of those this week? It's in terms of a coin flip, he could still score
I mean, it's
well.
a downgrade given what he's done, but yes, we could live with
Yeah.
it.
We can love up this week. I look at Trippier. Trippier's been a big success story for me. He's grand. If it wasn't for Trippier, I would be probably about 8 million. Adogi's grand. I think if I was having me pick up Spurs defenders, I would definitely choose Porro, especially for the next 2 weeks. But I can make do. I think if we were looking at, say, I think the thing about the wildcard, and I think the thing about wildcard 8 in particular is you need to have a lot of kind of medium to long tail picks, which don't necessarily optimize the next 2 weeks. And I think if me and you were to sit down and get the pen and paper out and say, who would we pick on a free hit this week? I think double Man United midfield could potentially, as ridiculous as that sounds, I think double Man United midfield potentially comes under conversation for a free hit pick. Now, anybody that played the wildcard last week, none of those guys have like Man United midfielders.
Or even an attacker like a Hoyland could work as well. But I hear you. Like you wouldn't give up on Man United if you were on a free hit this week. I agree.
No. And if we're thinking about expectation and expect the points for these players, and if we're to look at how they're sitting in terms of ownership, like these are players that we can gain from, and they're players that people aren't going to necessarily wildcard on this week, although some people might pick one Man United midfielder. People last week definitely didn't have them on their team, and I thought you made a great point in the wire when you were talking about deciding the right time to change lane. And I've got myself in a position where I'm 2.8 million. I don't want to be here. I'm a good player. My decisions haven't worked. I've picked players and they haven't scored points, and that's the bottom line. But do I want to get onto the same lane as everybody else, pick fundamentally the exact same team, and not feel as if I'm able to move forward? Like, these next couple of weeks feel like a gamble, and I think double Man United midfield fits the bill. Sterling against Burnley, I really like it. Like, I'm looking at Mark our stats. I know it's a website that we would look at, and Burnley have the third highest on average defensive line. Now, Sterling has to get in the pitch.
This is what I was going to say. Mudryk is now fit and Palmer was really good. So I'm a little worried actually with Sterling. But if he starts, you're right. He would be great.
I think if he starts, he's great. But we just kind of read that he leaves a bit in that and see where it goes. Wemo, again, away to United isn't too bad given United's kind of issues in defence at the minute. He does have a good fixture in game week 9. So if I was selling him, it would nearly be like a hokey cokey. So he could nearly stay on. Son's there, Alvarez and Haaland's pretty fine. I've got one free transfer left with this team. I've got 0.4 million in the bank. So if I was looking at this team in terms of identifying, look, and this is a good starting point for anybody, look, where's my weakest link? Where am I weakest in terms of this team? And the weakest link is undoubtedly defence. It's undoubtedly the fact that Stupion's out until maybe game week 10, game week 11. In the next couple of weeks, I'm probably not going to play Saliba anyway, but given the injury, if I was taking out a defender, it would be a Stupinian. And bringing in Porro probably is, quote-unquote, optimal, but something that's kind of tickling my fancy is it's about Richarlison, it's about minutes, and I'm thinking to myself, Manor Solomon's out, Perisic is out, Brennan Johnson we know is definitely out, so they're going to play a front three of Richarlison, Son, Kulusevski, right? Given the fact that Son has had on-off issues with his groin, he's definitely not playing 90 minutes, maybe say 70.
Yeah.
Madison has a wee bit of ongoing issues in terms of injuries as well, where he seems to get subbed off early and they kind of wrap him and cop him. Like we can see that like recently in games where they were going for the one, Postecoglou had to take them off, and then people are saying, "Oh, that's crazy. Why did they do that?" And it's like these players can only play to a certain limit, and I think looking at all that, Richarlison plays a full match right deep on the extra time. His X minutes are brilliant this week. And in a way, I'm kind of looking at maybe Bumo, the Richarlison, and taking Saliba in the chin and just playing him. And then next week, maybe bringing Bumo back in for Sterling or go Morgan Gibbs White or something like that in game week 9. I don't know. It's just a thought. Like, it all depends on how I see it happening with Brennan Johnson in game week 9. I think Richarlison's minutes for this week they're just gold plated. In game week 9, I don't think that's the case, but his international duty, I think he's got Venezuela, I think he's got Uruguay in there, he's on the squad.
Just feels a little short term. That's the thing.
It does feel short term, but it brings me back to this analogy that you used about the lanes, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, there's not many people going to get in that lane with very good reason. Like, I picked Richarlison at the start of the season, and he was a disaster pick. He really didn't work out. His minutes worked out. He was on the pitch, and if we look at, I suppose, the data from like Postecoglou Spurs, like now, with the benefit of kind of 7 game weeks, they're like one of the best attacks in the division. And if somebody had told you, if somebody had a fast forward in time to game week 8 and given you Spurs' XG data and told you, say, Richarlison is going to start the first 3 or 4 games up front, I think everybody would have went, I'll have a
Of
piece of
course.
that. So I don't think I don't want to justify it too much. I don't think it was a bad pick, but at the same time, I'm looking at him this week and thinking, well, if Son's maybe only going to play 70 minutes, there's going to be a certain point in time where they maybe play Richarlison up front for 20, 30 minutes, maybe going on the stoppage time too. I do like him this week. It's a really leap of faith because you'd be going into game week 9 really not knowing if he's going to play or not. And that's you could put him on like a 95-minute estimate for his months in game week 8, and in game week 9 you could put him on 40 because you just don't know.
Yeah. See, I have a similar thing when I'll come to my team where you can make a midfield transfer, but then that's the problem that if you're looking to wildcard in game week 10, you have to also account for something happening over the international break. So you have to account for a transfer. So if you're going to make a transfer only for this week, like a Richarlison, or I was also thinking of Luis Diaz, for example, then
Mm-hmm.
the problem is if the guy isn't starting, then you are pushing yourself closer to wildcard 9, which again, for me, again, you'll be confused in wildcard 9. Should I have Spurs? How many Spurs? Because they're home to Fulham. My wildcard 10 has no Spurs or only
Mm-hmm.
one Spurs. So for me, I want to pick for 2 weeks. I don't want the uncertainty. And I get the upside argument, but I guess it's a little easier for me because I have Madison as well. So I have 2 bites of the Spurs attack. If you did that, you'd have double defense. Although Porro is, you could say, almost an attacker, basically, because Kulusevski, you know, does operate, but he's not as threatening in the box. So Porro does sort of shoot more on that side than in a Dogi. So there is that upside there as well. So I'm confused myself, but where are you landing, or where are you with it at the moment? Because Porro is going to rise in price tonight. You
I
could
don't
just
care
let
about
it
the
go.
price. No, I definitely will let it go. It's not something I'm going to rush into, and this is I've kind of retreated on the like a defensive style of play in terms of my transfers because I am 2.8 million, and like all my focus on at the minute is trying to make the best transfer decision that I can make. What's the budget I have? What's the transfers I have available every single week? That's just kind of trying to pull myself right back to the basics. And I can only do that by playing to the deadline. I can't do that by making a change based on price and Poro. And the thing is, if I knew I was getting Poro, if I had Son and Madison and I knew I was getting Poro and I was going to be priced out tonight, I would 100% make a transfer for Poro. But
Hmm.
this situation is just a wee bit different. I could go Poro. It's probably a very sensible play to go Poro. I could also go for Richardson, but like I think your point in the midfielders is good because I wouldn't sell Sterling this week unless we got some kind of noises from Pochettino that well he's not going to play this week because obviously like selling him
But
before
he's
Burnley
never going to
just
say
seemed
that.
he's never going to say that. I don't know, but I kind of have to make the leap of faith
You
there.
have to make the. This is what I'm saying. You're not going to get from Pochettino anything around, unless somebody's sick or somebody's, if he, same with Chilwell. He never gave anything away. And my thing with yours is Mbuma is going to play up top. I mean, they're going to play 5 at the back. So you're basically saying Man United defense is dire, and I'm going to sell the striker playing that team.
And possibly buy him back the next week.
Yeah, so you're wasting 2 transfers instead of just using one for Poro and then using one next week for anything that happens. It could be that, Sun gets back very late, or I'm trying to use an example that doesn't trigger people.
No, it's okay.
Um, it could be your defender. It could be Trippier. He gets a little niggle. So anything can happen in an international break where there's uncertainty. You'll have about 4 yellow flags after we know that. We know it'll happen on a Friday after the international break. At that point, you'll be like, now I've created a 5th flag with Richarlison, and I'm not sure if he's going to start or not. Which one shall I deal with? That's where I am with thinking through whether I should go Richarlison or Porro.
That's fair. And like, you know how I play, and I play like a fairly kind of risk averse style. And like if I'm looking at my defense potentially on paper this week, like you're talking, say Trippier, Adoji, happy with both of them, and then Saliba. But then I'm going on the Botman bench, Stupinian bench. So if I don't technically make the defender transfer, And like I think like this. Say I do the Richarlison thing, which is going to create a transfer for me potentially in midfield again next week. Well, it is going to create a transfer for me in midfield again next week. What if I lose a defender going into this week? Like, what if somebody does a Botman and just mysteriously doesn't turn up? Then I'm down to two defenders. When the optimal move was to get rid of one of my injured players and buy a Poro. So I do know it's the way that I should go, but I do like to test this a wee bit. And like I was testing it, thinking about the minutes for Richarlison, and I do like it this week. I think it's very punty, but it'll be interesting to see how many people on Wildcard 8 that have been talking about it actually do go for it, but maybe not many.
What, triple mid? I
No,
don't think people will.
I see people budget wise have been putting Richarlison on to try and fit Haaland and Salah. You know, maybe they're a bit stretched for budget, but I don't know.
Anyway, we'll come to the team, the wildcard team, and we'll talk through that. So let's spend a minute on captaincy. So are you set on Son? Are you debating? I mean, we don't have Salah, so it's between Haaland and Son.
I'm definitely setting some. It's like hasn't really entered my equation to do anything, or me enter me thinking to do anything different. I think he's just a different animal when he's like when he's playing through the middle. We're assuming he's got the pains. Like I think you could be probably about 75 to 80% sure that he's on pains.
Yeah.
The fixtures are obviously great from a team perspective. Spurs are obviously great. You're looking at Haaland and you're going, I don't think you can dull down Haaland's numbers. Like Haaland's numbers have been off a scale. Like people want to kind of create a narrative and say, he's away to big six opposition, and Haaland can score against anybody. And I don't think we should get on this thinking that like when we're coming on this run now where he's going to face like Arsenal and Chelsea and Man United, and these games are all away from home, and then Liverpool and Spurs. Like I'm going to own him the whole way through this. Like it hasn't entered my thinking.
It hasn't, no. I mean, we
No,
we haven't talked about the no Haaland thing, but yeah, look, I think this is the hardest of all the games that we're talking about in terms of his run, right? I mean, the other harder games, away to Man United, away to Chelsea, is nowhere close to
no.
Arsenal. Arsenal will be up for it, but the models, the markets, everyone favors City to win or do better than Arsenal. So they're more likely to win than Arsenal, and draw is also likely. So there's no harm going for a Haaland, but I think I'll be the same when I come to my team, which is basically I think you got to go for it. Go for Son.
We don't get this opportunity too often, and like like if we use the optimal word again, like Son is ahead, but I suppose it depends on your assumptions on his minutes, and I do think some of the assumptions on his minutes are just far too high. Like I've seen predictions on his minutes in the mid-80s, and I just don't think that's
It's
really.
closer to 75, 70,
I think
75.
I think it definitely is closer to 75, and I think if you start moving the needle down below 75, like you're getting towards Salah's optimal. But I don't know. It feels like a week to roll the dice, given the fact that Luton do feel a wee bit like cannon fodder. Spurs do feel pretty high octane in attack, and I don't know. I think as FPL managers, we want to level all. We want to do something a wee bit exciting from time to time. Gambling against Haaland is obviously comes with health risks, but no, I think we do it. I'm more than happy to do it this week.
Yeah,
Early kickoff, we might get some news that he's starting, and I think if we do, that's
exactly. Exactly.
you know.
Okay, cool. I'm going to go to my team now because we also have the wildcard discussion to have. So my team is Pickford in goal, so similar to you. Trippier, similar to you. I've got Ruben Diaz. So for all the pain Ruben Diaz gave me over Botman's, because there was a moment where I was choosing between Botman and Diaz, and I went for the City defender. He lost out to Botman every week. Botman ended up scoring. He ended up conceding. Diaz basically both the weeks. So I haven't got much, but let's see. I'm going to play him both Arsenal away and Brighton at home. So he's my second defender that is hopefully okay for the next two. Then I've got Saliba, like you, who I am looking to do to Poro. That would be my natural, logical move without the Richarlison temptation. But I'll talk about Richarlison as well. So in midfield, I've got Maddison and Son. Son is captain. Rashford, Sterling, and Mbeumo. So I think our midfield is the same. No, I've got Maddison instead of Bruno.
Yeah.
And then Alvarez and Haaland.
It's the same.
And the bench is also okay. I mean, I've got Archer for sub, Fulham away. Kabore is also playing, so he's also fine. And I'm obviously, if I do If I get Porro, I'll get it for Estupinian. So actually, Saliba will be on the bench as well. So
Right.
actually, there's no flags here. If I get rid of Estupinian for Porro, so that's the question. Like if I do that, then I get Porro for the next 2 weeks. I've got Ruben Diaz. So next week, actually, I've got 4 good defenders because even I'm happy to play Saliba away to Chelsea. It's not the end of the world. So question is, should I be tempted? Should I just do Sterling to Richarlison and just play Saliba like you're debating? Or shall I just do the simple logical Estupinian to Porro? That's where I am. At the moment, I think I'm 70% Porro, 30% Richarlison. I think I will eat the price rise or basically I let it go, the Porro price rise,
Mm-hmm.
and hope that there is some news on Sterling or there is some news on a Saturday morning in terms of who's starting. If Richarlison is starting, and we 99% expect him to,
Yeah.
I may think about it. I think both are good upside moves, but my only fear is I don't want to get after all the sacrifices we made in game week 8. I don't want to now wildcard in game week 9. And so it would be a shame that just for this Richarlison punt, which may or may not work out, because look, the expected points for Porro are high as well. It's not
Mm.
like you're comparing Richarlison upside to somebody else. Porro could score a goal. He could get a clean sheet. So
Could.
so it just feels like I should do the Porro sensible move. But then I'm not. There's rumors in Manchester United forums that Rashford should be dropped. I don't think so, but that it's there. There are rumors in Chelsea forums that Sterling could be dropped, but again, I don't think so. But we've been wrong. We're sitting here, game week 7, ranked 3 million ish. There are things we've got wrong. So it's one of those where it'll come down to just pure luck. I mean, Sterling could start and score. I mean, both Rashford and Sterling are in the top 8 in the markets for if they start, the highest odds, the top 8 odds for scoring. Question is if they start or not.
Where did you get that data? Rob T.
Yeah, Rob T.
Very good piece of content.
Yeah, yeah. We've used this stuff before.
Yeah.
Um, Rob T on X. So that's where I am. I don't think there's any other issues here, and I certainly didn't consider a wild card for this reason. That I think my team is fine this week. I mean, if Sterling Rashford start, I would be actually sad if I score 5 less points than a wildcard team because I think the team is okay. Of course, Salah is the one differentiator here. If Salah goes big, that's big for wildcarders. If Trippier
Mm-hmm.
goes big, that's big for non-wildcarders because I don't think any
Yeah.
wildcards have Trippier.
Yeah. There's quite well, when we look at Joe's team, I'm sure like we'll be able to kind of talk around more wild cards and the general kind of wild card picks. But there are quite a few differences, as you say. Trippier depends if people wild card. Like people, Bowen seems to be very hot in wild card. And
Yes.
don't get me wrong, like I like Bowen as a pick, but picking Bowen going into Newcastle probably wouldn't
And
be for
and Villa
me.
away.
I don't I
Actually,
don't really like I don't really like it if I'm being completely honest. And I think we're seeing a lot of examples on we see them on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it of groupthink, and I think there's a lot of kind of groupthink just becomes so strong, and the template becomes so strong, and like you could say all the template becomes so strong for a reason, but the template has been absolutely chinned from game week 1. Like our template has,
but it's not
and
the
like
template. It's City. It's Chelsea and Man United. They've
I don't
basically
say it is Chelsea and Man United. It is.
like you could not predict them performing the way they did with the fixtures that
No,
they had. So
no.
that's just what it is. I mean, I think that's why people who've had a slow start shouldn't be too harsh on themselves. It was reasonable, very reasonable, to attack those teams. It did not work out. And the other thing for rank, not being there yet is a lot of people have wildcarded, so you're behind them. Of course you are. They gained their points. When you will wildcard, you will gain some points, hopefully as well.
Yeah.
So I don't think we should think in that sense of um, if we've made bad decisions on the template, then we should stay away from the template necessarily. But I think in isolation, in fact, now let's move to the wildcard discussion because I think in my team it's fairly straightforward. I'm going to do one of the two things which I mentioned. So let's go to the wildcard discussion.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the team that Joe has shared. So I'm going to read it out again. And then let's talk about position by position, right? We'll go goalkeeper, defense, midfielder, attack.
Okay.
Joe's got Areola and Turner in goal. He's got Cash, Anderson, Udogi, Burn, and Bayer as his 5 defenders. He's got Madison, Salah, Son, Bowen, and Neto as his 5 midfielders. Haaland, Watkins, and Archer as his 3 attackers. Now, this may have changed. I picked it up from a video yesterday, so it obviously his thinking may have changed, but it's interesting. I think this draft is interesting because it captures, I think, the Diaby risk of him not starting, because I think if Diaby is fit tomorrow, a lot of teams will just go for Diaby because he's the guy you want going into those fixtures of Luton, Forest, and Fulham in 10, 11, 12. And you wouldn't mind a away to Wolves and a home to West Ham as a fixture, which is why people have just started with Watkins now. So anyway, let's start from the top. Goalkeepers. I think every single person on every single wildcard that I've seen has got Areola and Turner. Would you have that in wildcard 10 as well? Or do you think there's opportunities or areas to be a little bit different?
Well, if I look at this and I compare it to something that I would want to do in wildcard 10, like the first thing that sticks out to me is how are these guys going to be prepared for the double game week? We're going to go through the blank game week 18. City and Brentford, like you can be sure that the double game week's going to crop up in 20 or something like that. And I'm seeing a lot of and it's not a criticism, and I don't want Joe to think I'm criticising his team. I don't know how well prepared those teams are for the double game week. And then loads of people will say, well, I can transfer those players on. I can buy those players. But they're saying the same thing about Arsenal players. And they're saying the same thing about Brighton players. And transfers are finite. We don't get 5 transfers a week. We only get 1 transfer a week.
Also, other things come up.
And also other things come up, and there's international breaks, there's potentially injuries, and I'm hearing lots of, but I'm only 3 moves away from that. And then I'm looking at the team and I'm thinking, but you also don't have, say, Flecken, or you don't have Bimo, or you don't have, say, Alvarez. Whereas, like, say, like 3 or 4 players like that, you'd be kind of thinking, okay, like, all right, this double game week's maybe pie in the sky at the minute, it's maybe in the long finger, but I don't see teams well equipped for that. Areola and Turner, I think Areola's been good. I think he would be nice as a backup. I do like Raya, if I'm being honest. Like, I do think come the time, Raya could be but I'm leaning towards wildcard 10. I think he could be my keeper, but I could see why people wouldn't do it this week, because immediately you're looking at Man City. But I think once you get beyond Man City, it's good.
But it's also money, right, Hibbo? I mean, the problem is everyone is poor.
Everyone else
because you're trying in this wildcard, and we'll have the same problem in 10. It's the only time where we're trying to squeeze Son, Salah, and Haaland. When you try to squeeze these 3, it basically affects your bench and it affects your keeper. And those are the areas where a lot of people say, look, I'll make a sacrifice because I'm not going to have Salah, Son, and Haaland the whole season. And I talked about this. I think people will just have Salah until game week 16, 17 max. And then again, money won't be a problem. So if somebody was actually wildcarding game week 17, 18, you could have Raya, you could have Flecken as your second keeper. I mean, I know you won't do that, but at that point, money is not a problem, because you take that 4 million from Salah and make him into a Saka. You distribute it in your keeper, in your 5th midfielder, and your defender. You can afford any team you want. So, and that's what's going to happen, because Salah's good fixtures will end. He's going to go off to AFCON, basically pretty much between game week 17 to game week 25, 26. People will enjoy a lot of value in their team. And then again, Salah won't be optimal unless his fixtures are really, really, really good. So I think Areola Turner naturally fits because people are trying to squeeze money. Plus, I think 20 is still fine. Whether you can make it or not, I think people are just saying, look, it's City away and Crystal Palace away. If it happens in game week 20, chuck it. I'll just have yeah. No, just have Areola. You don't have to have a double game weeker, right? So that would be the thinking. If you gave me extra money, I think if you gave every wildcarder 1 million more, they'd have Raya here or a Flecken here. But they don't have it. So that's the issue. Anyway, let's go from defense, from goalkeeper to defense. No need to talk about cash. I think everybody will have cash. And rightly so. Villa's next 5, 6 are incredible. So I think it's worth having that for the upside. I really wish Moreno was fit, because he would give that other different edge to cash, but he's not fit. I mean, we'll see after the international break if he's fit or not, but I don't see myself going there now. Given that he's had injury concerns, you get on him and then he gets injured again. It's just not nice.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
So then there's a Spurs defender every draft. I've seen some
Yeah.
Poros, I've seen some Udogis. Udogis are the ones for people who are trying to stretch every single dollar out of it, or ones who've had Udogi for a while and have some value tied up. So both of them have Udogi, others have Poro, also understandable. Um, this draft has Palace defender and a Newcastle defender. So I like the fact that it's got a little bit of money spread into the first sub because injuries happen. I mean, if Anderson gets injured, you don't want to be forced into making a transfer to take out Anderson. You have a Burn who can come on and help out. So, what are your thoughts on third, fourth defenders on wildcards? Wildcard 8 only.
No, well, I like this Newcastle setup. Like, I think Byrne. I think he could still make an argument for double Newcastle defense if somebody bought Andy Botman at a kind of cheap enough price. Um, Given the way that like we're seeing Newcastle performing defensively now, I know they've kind of turned the corner, but it would be something that would interest me.
But you can't take a chance on Botman, right? He's out until the
No, you
international
can't.
break.
No, you can't take a chance on
You
Botman.
have
But I
to take
think
Share.
you would have to take Share, who's obviously a wee bit more money, But no, it would be something that would interest me because it's somewhere I wanted to go anyway. And looking at the fixtures kind of long term for Newcastle, they still stay good for like a long time yet. No, I think this is good. I wouldn't have considered a Palace defender. I don't think.
Palace are
But
decent actually.
Anderson,
Anderson
they
has,
haven't.
yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead, sorry.
I was going to say Palace have decent fixtures for a while. So what Anderson does is he doesn't force you into that I have to get an Arsenal defender or I have to get a Brighton defender or a Stupinian. You could also live with Anderson. Now I know it's not Crystal Palace is not Arsenal defense and it's not a Stupinian, but it's a little bit more long term than going for somebody who you only want for 2-3 weeks, which I think the Spurs defender, I don't think you want the Spurs defender beyond game week 10, 11. So I get it to some extent.
Yeah, like some of the Spurs fixtures like stay. Like if you're looking, say Luton, Fulham, as opposed to immediate like Crystal Palace, Chelsea
Away,
at home, Wolves,
Chelsea.
Villa. It's
They're not
not. It's
defensively
not.
great, are they?
They're not defensively great, but like for that price point, it's in comparison to other stuff that you could have, you could live with. Like your point about Arsenal is good. Like, if I was changing this team, I probably would maybe have an Arsenal defender as opposed to Anderson, and maybe look at playing Burn this week.
I agree. You could go for Gabriel straight away, and bench Gabriel and play Burn. I think that's a good suggestion. I would look at that as well. But
Because
the only
that's where we're going to go. Like by the time our wild cards come around, you're going to see, like as you said before we came on stream, like a Zinchenko, or maybe like a Brighton defender, maybe a Stupinian's fit again. Who knows? But that's where they'll probably go.
yeah, I agree. But the only thing with Gabriel right now is there's a small because Partey is back now. Remember what happened early season when Partey was fit. So we've actually never seen Gabriel nailed with minutes when Partey is fit. So we will find out.
Uh,
And if he's even benched once, because the City game is such where he could look to do that, then people will just go, okay, I'm off Gabriel. I'm not touching him. So you don't want to end up with a defender on your wild card where he's again become a problem.
no, you don't want to be using transfers in defence. Like if I look at my first 7 game weeks, I've had to use transfers in defence a lot because of injuries. And it's not a great spot to be in. Like you're trying to kind of take your team forward a bit, and you're maybe having to change James out, or it's far from ideal.
Yeah.
But no, I do agree with you and Gabriel. He was one I avoided at the start because you got the early team news going into game week 1. But no, he does look potentially good. But if there's any rotation risk at all, I don't think we want him.
If you can
But
stretch it, Zinchenko is the one. Then get so let's say if Joe had 0.2 more, just get Zinchenko instead of Anderson and play Burn. I think I like that.
yeah.
Or if Estupinian was fit. I think both those options would have been decent.
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's go to midfield. So midfield, everyone has Son, Salah, Madison. So nothing to discuss there. I think those are natural picks. Now, one thing people need to think about is when they have Son, Madison, and Salah, by game week 10, you may want to think about a Arsenal midfielder because they have Sheffield United at home. So which of these two becomes Saka? You may say neither because I'm happy with my Spurs mids, but some plan to get to an Arsenal mid would be advisable. Because the other two, you're not going to get any money out of them and make them into something else. So let's talk about Bowen first. So Bowen has been a darling, highest for non-pen XG amongst midfielders so far, which is incredible. And it's just a decent pick. Now, whether he's a good pick now versus in 2 weeks, that's a question because he plays Newcastle at home. We know how good Newcastle are. But it's, Newcastle are away. They're coming off playing PSG. Maybe there's some joy, maybe.
Yeah.
And then he plays Villa away. We know Villa are very good at home as well. So it's two tough fixtures. You can still have faith, but I think it's two tough fixtures. So what are your thoughts on going for Bowen straight away?
No, I would kind of agree with you. And like, if I'm looking at those fixtures from game week 10, Everton, Brentford away, and then Forest at home, Burnley away, Palace at home, like they're really good fixtures. Newcastle, I think, is tough. I think Villa is definitely tough, and I don't know if he's a pick and wild card that I don't particularly like, despite the fact that he's done a lot of really good stuff in the opening 7 game weeks. I'm just not completely sold. I do think there's different directions you could potentially go with this, but I'm not really convinced in Bowen just solely for fixtures in the next 2. Like he could be a wee bit more aggressive and maybe like who's in the price range? What price is Bowen?
He's like 7.2. But see, the thing is, this is where the discussion that you're making is people don't have so many transfers to move people on, right?
They don't.
So they have to calibrate in certain sense that which players do I want long term for sure. I'm just going to get them now. So this is why we were talking about going Zinchenko instead of Anderson and just get him now. Bowen, I think, could fall in that category. So I do get people doing it because you want Bowen from game week 10. So you just say, look, you know what? If I get lucky, he scores a goal in the next 2 in those 2 tougher games, fair. Because there's nobody else really competing in that position. If Diaby was fit, I think a lot of people could just go instead of Bowen, they would go Diaby and do something else with that remaining money or hope to get Bowen later for Maddison. So that could have worked. But Diaby actually not being fit is not ideal for the planning because people will want Diaby as well in game week 10 because Diaby plays Nottingham Forest, Fulham and Luton. 3 games, 10, 11, 12. That's too good as a striker for Villa. So I think people might want to have a Diaby plan as well if he's not fit. And that's where I don't like the Neto place spot. Problem with Neto.
It's hard to bring up, isn't he? The different player.
Sorry?
He's hard to lift up to another player, like, because of the price point he's at it, like 5.7.
Yeah, that's why.
Like you're looking, say, not Brentford, Brighton, like Liverpool and Man City in the next 2, and then it's just absolutely green from like game week 10 right through to nearly game week 17. And like I'm looking at a team like that and thinking, well, how do they get Matoma? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because you're looking at it thinking they're maybe going to have to go Maddison to Saka, which is going to take money, which at the minute they don't really have. Well, how do they also get Matoma? And I know we're going to have those issues, but they're 2 weeks down the line, I suppose, and you can juggle a wee bit more. But no, it's not easy, like.
So this is the Bowen and the Neto and the Watkins position are giving people the most headache because you could basically take some money out of your fourth defender. Let's say you bring Burn down to a 3.9. I know people don't like bad benches, but let's say you go with that. You take that money, that 0.6, you put it on Neto, that becomes 6.2. You take the Anderson money, make him into a Gehi. Gehi is what, 5? No, what money is Gehi?
Check for you now.
4.5?
4.5, yeah.
Yeah. So then now you're getting to a 6-ish midfielder, 6.3 type midfielder. So that now gets you, there's a few options. There's Ward-Prowse. Now you don't want to get Bowen and Ward-Prowse as your 2, but that's decent. Gordon is decent.
What do you think of the argument that, like, say, the injuries to like Eze, where he's out for what? Well, we assume he's out for about 6 weeks, although there was that bit of news, but we haven't heard much since. And then, like, say, for example, the question marks around Diaby, like, do you think, and it's not something that I'm going to do, but like you're looking at the price points of like this team of Joe's, and it is stretched, and like you're saying, look, this isn't a marriage. we're not going to be sitting with Haaland and Salah from Lodi game week 38, and that's grand. But do you think that these stretch positions, like fourth and fifth mid, maybe even third, fourth, and fifth defender, and basically no money on goalkeepers, do you think it adds any kind of validity to the kind of no Haaland thing?
Well, of course. I mean, this is why people are doing it. People are
That is
saying,
why people are doing. That is why people are doing
yeah.
it. You know, but
I mean, instead of Neto, it gets you a Saka.
it does.
Instead of Haaland, you have to basically downgrade him to a Darwin, let's say, or an Alvarez, and Neto becomes a Saka. Anderson becomes a Trippier. Burn becomes a Trent. I mean, incredible. But
You can get Rashford for say or Bruno
yeah,
maybe for Sheffield United, or right, you eat the Man City fixture, but beyond that, it's like
but
Luton.
FPL is also about risk management, right? So
It
you
is.
could
I
you could
fully
have
agree.
Trent could do nothing. Trippier could suddenly start to disappoint, but Haaland scores a hat trick, and everyone owns Haaland. Not everybody owns Trent. So I get both sides of it. There is arguments. I mean, Andy Martin is considering it. A lot of models, Analytics FC are considering it. So it's not
They
like
are.
one camp is thinking about it. Everyone is thinking about it. I'm sure if
Mm-hmm.
you're on a wild card, at one point in time, you've taken out Haaland and seen what does that do. It's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does it. You've also maybe considered taking out Salah and seeing what does that do. And then you logically concluded that Salah has the better fixtures. Then maybe it's Haaland who I should take out. And then you say, actually, no, that's too scary. I'm not going to do that. So everyone's gone through this cycle. I think we will go through this cycle as well when whoever wildcards later. So it is fine to do it, but you need to see who you want to sacrifice. I think in game week 10, I will sacrifice Son. I keep saying that if he scores 2 hat tricks in the next 2 game weeks, I will not sacrifice Son. But some sacrifice has to be made. We cannot have all the good players. This is why this season is hard because there's a big selection of good players that can do well. Watkins can score a 20-pointer. Trippier can score 30 points in 2 weeks. If you don't have these players, you go behind. But you just hope that if you keep picking good players, your player will also score 15, 20 points one day, and that will help you sort of keep up or make up the ground that you lost. I just
I
don't
think
think
so.
selling Haaland is the way to do it.
No, I didn't. But I started looking at the drafts today. That was the only reason it kind of came onto my head. I looked at the drafts, and I've looked at the like of this draft, not specifically Joe's, but I've looked at other drafts like Joe's, and there are the points where it does get stretched around Neto, Diaby we don't really have, and then you're looking at players on around that price point, and you're like, Mbuemo's he can't be reached anyway, but his fixtures are about to drop off a bit. Matoma, we don't want them for the next 2 years. People don't want them for the next 2, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, like, how do you get to that big United mud, and how do you? And I 100% agree with your point that you can't have everybody, and not having Haaland's like the biggest sacrifice of all. It's not really for me, like because like I do play like low risk optimal. If you want to call, if you want to put a name on it, that's what it is,
Yeah,
and that's not backing against. And I also don't think that Haaland's fixtures are that difficult. You
I agree.
know,
I agree.
on paper, like people will say, "Oh, look, he's playing top six away from home," and you're going, "He's playing Brighton next week." Brighton
He's
are just
he's the best
Brighton are
captain on
conceding
paper next
goals
week.
for.
I have no
I'm
doubt about it.
100%. I'm 100% going to captain them next week, and then when we go forward to Bournemouth, I agree.
100%
Salah's got
best
a great
captain.
fixture, but we'll have Salah then too. You know, you're going to have them, and you're maybe going to have Sunday. I don't know, but no, it's hard. Like I do think looking at the midfield, Joe's probably made the best of what he can do with his money, and I do think in general, like looking at his team overall, the only thing I would potentially do is go, well, would have maybe park an Arsenal defender in the bench instead of Anderson and play Burn this week? It's probably
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So I think if Diaby is fit, you can get Bowen down to Diaby and Neto up to Ward-Prowse. I think that's a nice. Before Diaby was injured, a lot of people had that draft. I think another way is you keep Bowen, but you make Neto into a striker. So you get a third striker. If you have a lot of money, that could be Alvarez. That would solve it. If you don't have a lot of money, it could be Solanke. So that is another way where you can make it work where, Solanke will be popular. I really think, I mean, he's got good 3 fixtures. You could
yeah.
get Solanke in, and if you have a good, he could even rotate well with Archer, or you could have somebody else like a fourth defender who he could rotate well with. I think it's okay. It's
Like
viable.
he's almost playable right through until that blank, because like he's like Everton, Wolves, Burnley. He's got Man City, which he could swear from Newcastle, but then like Sheffield United, Villa, Palace. It's all great. Luton, Forest, and Fulham. Beyond that, it's all very good.
Exactly.
Um, I'm obviously pretty hot on Alvarez. I know like City's fixtures aren't brilliant, and like I know there's this argument that people are coming off Haaland, although like the Haaland list or no Haaland teams I've seen today, lots of them going Alvarez Watkins as their front two,
Yeah.
and then they're using the money elsewhere. But bar anything drastic like that, I don't really see much that I could change. Bar your kind of suggestions, like it's, and I think that's the issue with this wild card for me. It's
But that will be an issue
fairly
in every wildcard. It will be the budget will be a stretch in every wildcard.
No, but I don't just mean the budget. I think there's a lack of options of where like you can go with this. Like, I do think down the line for our wild card and 10, you could maybe say, well, could I go Darwin? Could it? There's a wee bit more information. He could be a wee bit more daring. Where I feel this is very kind of, you need to have Salah, you need to have your 3 Spurs players, you need to have a good chunk of Aston Villa, and we are going to reach that at our point too. But it does feel very kind of stodgy, and all the teams are the same.
This is the car lane analogy. I mean, for those that didn't hear, basically the thinking was if you're behind in traffic to another car which you want to catch up, right? If both of you switch lanes at the same time to the same lane, you've basically locked in being behind. If you basically let the other car switch, you stick to your lane, maybe your lane goes faster for a little while, or you stick to another lane. You turn left and you go to another lane, and maybe that lane goes even faster than the lane that the first one went in. So that's the thinking, where if you don't desperately need to wildcard and you see people around you wildcarding, just have a good think if your team really needs a wildcard. Some teams are decimated because there have been so many
They
injuries.
are.
They've got one fit defender. So I get it. I get that this is a week where a lot of, triggers have been pulled, and it is what it is. You have to go with what it is, and you don't have to be different for the sake of it. I think the team with 3 Spurs, Salah, 2 or 3 Villa, Haaland, Alvarez, or maybe not Alvarez, I think it's fine. I think that's fine. It's a good team. So just go with that. And I think the last thing is on Trippier. People would say, why aren't you buying the best player in the game at the moment? I mean, he's scoring 12, 18 pointers for breakfast. If you wanted to do that, the sacrifice is Watkins. You do Watkins to Alvarez, and then your one defender can become Trippier, if you wanted to do that. I think people have just said that Watkins' fixtures are just insane. He's just scored 20 points. He won't score that. In the next 5 weeks, don't expect 20 points again.
No.
But he's in form. He's been called by Southgate. He's being selfish. By the way, those highlights, he was so selfish. He wasn't passing to Diaby. When I watched that game, I actually considered, should I get Diaby? Because Watkins is not in the mood to pass at all. He wants the goals. So that's one to monitor next couple of weeks.
But I think if you look at the different points in this season, it's been defined by that big hole player that people haven't necessarily had. You've had Watkins, you've had Son, you've had Sterling, and for the most part, people have jumped on afterwards. They haven't hit the points.
Correct.
And like a point in Trippier, let's just rewind back about 4 or 5 weeks, and if you were like a regular in kind of FPL X or whatever we want to call it, FPL Twitter, Trippier had been completely written off as an option. People were saying, no, but this is true. Like, people were saying, Newcastle haven't kept the clean sheets and God knows when. He can't justify the extra outlay of like 1.5 million or 2 million more than Botman. I think he made outscore Botman by maybe 2-1 in the last
That's
3
when
weeks
Botman
alone.
scored a goal.
And I do get your point. Like, it's like we picked the United players, and if you pulled up like an XG table or an XGI and we looked at the deltas, all our players from our game week 1 team are top of like the negative delta table.
Yeah.
They're the players we started with. And that kind of justifies in a way my position of like who I picked. And I think, well, the logic was there. I picked the fixtures. They didn't perform. They've underperformed. That's grand. But then I look at Trippier in the last 3 weeks and I think, well, things can change fast.
Yeah, it does.
I can get on the right player. I can get the next Watkins. I can get the next Trippier. And maybe like don't get too down on yourself is what I would say to people watching the stream. Like,
Agreed. Okay, let's leave it there, Hibbo. anything else that we haven't covered that you want to say?
No, I think it's all good.
Excellent.
Happy.
Okay, don't forget Spurs is the first kickoff. So if you don't have to make a transfer, might as well wait till Saturday morning. You might hear something that may fundamentally change your transfers if you can. But otherwise, good luck. Good luck to those that are in wildcard, and good luck to those that are looking to hold on, or those that have played it and now are suffering with some injuries. We all need to navigate these tough waters.
Best of luck for Gameweek 8.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Okay.